Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're speaking from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Huh? Text 9. Acha, okay. So we had a quandary, which I was going to present before you, but now it's been solved. Oh, look. Of course, I should have known. The source of all information, the internet. So now the truth has been revealed, and we're on text 9 of the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 8. You knew that. And the title of the chapter is Attaining the Supreme, Hare Krishna. And actually, I had been told to give class on text 8, and then yesterday she said, I don't know which it is. She said, so talk on both. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But so he took it liberty. And okay, so we'll chant text 9 together, and then if the sentiment moves me, we'll speak on both 8 and 9. Kavim Purana Manushashitaram Anur Aniyam Sam Anusmaredya Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnang Tamasak Parasthat Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram Anur Aniyam Sam Anusmaredya Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnang Tamasak Parasthat Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram Anur Aniyam Sam Anusmaredya Sarasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasak Parasthat. Vaishnavas.
Kavim Puranam Anusasitaram
Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram
Anur Aniyam Sam Anusmaretyaha Sarvasya Tataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasak Parastat
Kavim Puranam Anusasitaram Anoraniyam Samanusmaredya
Anoraniyam Asmanusmaredya Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasak Parastat
Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram
Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram
Anoraniyam Sam Anusmaredya
Anoraniyam Smaradutchameta Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Adicha. Vaishnavis? Adicha Varnam Parasaptastat Kavim Puranam Anusashitaram Anur Aniyam Sam Anusmaratyaha Sarvasya Datam Achintya Rupam Adicha Varnam Tamasa Parastat Kavim, the one who knows everything. Puranam, the oldest. Anuchashataram, the controller. Anu, then the atom. Aniyangsam, smaller. Anusmaret, always thinks of. Ya, one who. Sarvasya, of everything. Dataram, the maintainer. Achintya, inconceivable. Rupam, whose form. Adityavarnam, luminous like the sun. Tamasa, to darkness. Parastat, transcendental. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond this material nature. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The purpose of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. The foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. That is very difficult. The process of thinking of Krishna, however, is very easy and is factually stated herein. First of all, the Lord is Purusha, a person. We think of the person Ram and the person Krishna. And whether one thinks of Ram or Krishna, what he is like is described in this verse of Bhagavad-Gita. The Lord is Kavi, that is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore he knows everything. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe, and he is the maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part the tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Therefore, he is called smaller than the smallest. As the Supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. We cannot comprehend even this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useless argument and speculation should accept what is stated in the scriptures, like the Vedas, Bhagavad-Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarane Mukam Karati Vachalam Pangam Langayate Garim Yat Kripa Tvam Maham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Om Aginati Mirandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. Hare Bol. So this section of the Bhagavad-Gita, we used to call it the dying chapter. The chapter 8 is the dying chapter. The euphemism is attaining the Supreme, but sometimes we die and we don't attain the Supreme. That's the problem. So Krishna here is explaining how to be successful in death and how to achieve the ultimate goal of the human form of life by attaining the Supreme. This is particularly relevant to Arjuna because Arjuna is on a battlefield and death is very common on the battlefield. And one might assume that he is considering that not only he might die, but definitely some other people on the battlefield are going to die. There's definitely going to be death there. His relatives, one way or the other, are going to die because his relatives are on both sides. And so his relatives are going to die. And as we know from the knowledge of what happened, Arjuna didn't know what happened, but we know what happened, that Arjuna's son dies, and his grandfather dies, and his teacher dies. All those persons who were very, very dear to him die on the battlefield. So how to die attaining the Supreme, and how to make this human form of life a success. That's the theme of the Srimad Bhagavatam also, right? The Maharaj Parikshit comes and he asks, what's the duty of a person who's about to die? And the whole Bhagavatam is spoken in relevance to that question. There are many other questions, but they all center around this goal of Maharaj Parikshit, that he has 7 days to live, and he wants to make those 7 days so meaningful that his life will become successful. He walks away from everything, from a kingdom, from power, from so many things that we work for in our lifetime, right? So many people are working for so many material things. They want to achieve success in so many different ways. But Maharaj Parikshit, he walked away from all those things. And Arjuna is considering that he would be willing to walk away from all these things, right? At the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna, he says to Krishna, I don't want any of this stuff. I don't want the kingdom. I don't care about it. I don't want anything. Better maybe just walk away from this thing. Why should we fight? Why should we kill all these people unnecessarily? Let's just give it up and go about chanting Hare Krishna. I'd be happy to do that. But Krishna doesn't allow him to do that because there's some business that's at hand. He has many things to accomplish. As in many ways, Krishna, whenever he acts, he has many things to accomplish. And in the battle of Kurukshetra as well, he has many things to accomplish. And Arjuna is to be but an instrument in that fight. And by becoming an instrument in that fight, Arjuna's life will become successful. Arjuna is being instructed in many, many ways throughout the Bhagavad-Gita, but practically speaking, at the end of each bit of discussion, I always remind myself that Bhagavad-Gita is a conversation. It's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, taking place at a very interesting junction, standing in the middle of a battle. Both people are waiting. Conch shells have blown. People are lined up, ready to fight. Tensions are high. And all of a sudden, in the middle of everything, Arjuna says, wait a minute, let's discuss this. And so Krishna obliges him, and he has this Bhagavad-Gita discussion. And when he has this discussion, he doesn't say chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but rather he's just discussing dealing with Arjuna's doubts. One by one they come up. Sometimes people come to me, I have a doubt, and they ask me some question. I got a letter, I have a doubt. I don't know whether to push my counter beads up or down. Just 2 days ago, seriously, I got this letter. I have a doubt. I don't know whether to push my counter beads up or down. My friend, this one, he does it up, and my other friend, that one, he does it down. And I don't know which is better. Can you please dispel my doubt? So Arjuna's doubt was a little bit more serious than whether to push the counter beads up or down. And here actually comes a kind of pivotal question that Arjuna has. How do I become successful at the moment of death? How do I remember you at the moment of death? Because if you remember in the 7th chapter, and I'm sure you've heard, that Krishna tells Arjuna, that if you remember me at the moment, then if you do these things, then you'll be able to remember me at the moment of death. How do I remember you at the moment of death? How do I do these things? Well, I don't even know what these words mean. So at the beginning of the chapter, Arjuna asks for some definitions. And then the discussion comes, how to remember Krishna at the moment of death. Now, in this particular section that we're discussing here, Arjuna is being taught or told by Krishna how to remember him through the process of yoga. And the focus is on Supersoul. Now, Arjuna had Krishna sitting right in front of him. He was actually talking to him. And his relationship was not one of yoga, meditation, jnana. That wasn't Arjuna's style, right? Arjuna had a relationship with Krishna as a beautiful person. Even you'll see later on, after Arjuna sees the universal form, he actually says, maybe I was presumptuous because I had this close relationship with you. I called you a friend, I sat on a bed with you, I put my arm around you, we talked, we joked, we laughed together. Maybe I was presumptuous in doing that. I didn't conceive of you in this vast way, this supreme personality of everything way. I never considered that. But Krishna was later convinced him, or later showed him actually, that that realization is lower. Actually, the higher realization is to have a loving relationship with Krishna. And so here, Krishna is giving 8 different ways to think of him. And the one that Prabhupada stresses is that he's a person, that Krishna is a person. Because here we have a lot of Aishwarya. There's, he's the oldest, he's the controller, he's smaller than the smallest because he's in the heart. He's the maintainer of everything. He's beyond all material conception. And he's inconceivable. All those things are inconceivable. How do you meditate on something inconceivable if you can't conceive of it? So it's difficult, right, to meditate on something that you can't conceive of. And yet the yogis, they try to do this thing, and they try to fix their mind and focus their consciousness, withdraw their senses from sense objects. But Arjuna has already said that is too hard for him, that he really can't do those things, that he's not, especially now on the battlefield, how is he supposed to practice yoga? It's not really possible. So Krishna is telling him that these people do that, but you'll see later on in the chapter, in the discussion really, Krishna will move towards the understanding that all you have to do is think of me. You just have to remember me. Now I'm giving you some ways to remember me. These are not the easiest ways to remember me. The easiest ways to remember me is to think of me as a person, to chant my name constantly, to engage in my loving devotional service, to put me before you in every aspect of your life, to infuse your life with me, and then you'll be fixed in me all the time, and you'll definitely remember me at the moment of death because you'll remember me all the time. And this is the process that Srila Prabhupada gave us. This is the process that we call sometimes the Prabhupada elevator. When we're discussing Bhagavad-Gita, we speak of that you can take the yoga ladder or you can take the Prabhupada elevator. Because the yoga ladder is a slow process. When you walk up a big bunch of stairs, when you get up there, you're a little tired, your legs are weak. But when you take the elevator, you go quickly. And there's no chance of falling, there's no chance of getting off at the wrong floor. You just go to the top. So Prabhupada, he took us to the top. And you'll see that even Krishna, at the end of each chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, and also throughout, there are hints, that he takes us to that same level, that just remember me. Of all yogis, he who meditates on me is the highest. And at the end of this chapter, at the end of every chapter, and ultimately at the end of Bhagavad-Gita, he says, just forget about everything, right? Sarvadan mam parichaja mam ekam vasaranam. Fix your mind on one thing, on me. Give up everything else. Don't worry about all these other things. I've told you so many things, but just remember this one thing. Just surrender to me. Just trust me. Have faith in me. And ultimately surrender to me. And I'll take care of everything. You don't have to fear anything. If we can come to that realization of having no fear and accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can achieve perfection in this life. And it's interesting to note that we see in Srila Prabhupada the perfect example, that he came to America, he had no fear. We come into Delhi, and if no one's there to pick us up at the airport, we're nervous, right? We look outside, no one's standing there with our name, and we wonder, what am I supposed to do? But we, in our pocket, we have our cell phone, and we have all the different arrangements made, and, we just have to find the cab with the right driver and the right license plate, and we're okay. But Prabhupada didn't have any of those things, and yet he had no fear. He said when he got off the boat, he didn't know whether it would turn right or left. But it wasn't a problem, because he knew that Krishna was taking care. And throughout his experience, he always knew that Krishna was there. And he said, I was never alone. I never felt alone. I always had my spiritual master with me, and I always had Krishna with me. And because those two people were always with him, he never had any fear, free from fear. So we can achieve that perfection, that goal of going back to Godhead, if we can remember Krishna all the time. But it requires abhyasa, which is what's mentioned in the 8th verse, right? Abhyasa yoga yuktena. That practice. Abhyasa means practice. That I have to do it now so that I'll be able to do it later. Because when I have to do it at the moment of death, there'll be competition for my consciousness. Right? There'll be competition for my consciousness. Competition because everything will hurt and things will start breaking down and all my attachments will be broken and I'll have no recourse but to let them go. There'll be fear, the possibility of fear, because the material body will stop working properly. My voice will be choked up, perhaps. Mucus will be, there's that prayer by Maharaj Kulakshekar. Let me remember you now. Let my mind go to you now. Because at the moment of death, I may not be able to chant your name. I may not be able to remember you. The mind may be clouded. So many things come. Some people, sometimes we see they lose their faculties. They can't remember anything. They can't say anything. They can't function at all. So at the moment of death, it may be difficult to remember Krishna. But if we practice throughout our life, then automatically, we use this word automatically, it will come to us. Krishna will give us remembrance of Krishna. Krishna will give us, Prabhupada told us that I guarantee you that I'll be there for you at the moment of death. I'll help you remember Krishna. I'll help you remember. And we've seen so many devotees now, death is not so far away. When we were first joining the Hare Krishna movement, death was like, what's death, We're 19 years old, who thinks of death? So don't worry about death. Even Prabhupada, we thought, death is not going to happen, he's going to live forever. Even though he kept saying to us, I'm an old man, I can die at any moment, we thought, yeah, you're just saying that, but you're going to live forever, and we're going to live forever too. We're eternal, and we're young, and we're strong, and what's this death stuff? But now we're a little bit older. Death is a little bit more of a reality to many of us. Maybe to some of you, no, still. But to some of us, death is close. And to many of my godbrothers, many of my friends, death has already been. It's already a fact. And we see that many devotees leave in a very glorious way because their whole lives they've been remembering Krishna. And because they've remembering Krishna their whole life, their death is glorious. They leave absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can see the living result of Prabhupada's instruction. And Krishna is so kind that in the Bhagavad-Gita here, he's giving us different ways to remember him, but they're very vague ways, except for the fact that he's a person. And even that, he's a person, okay, he's a person, but he doesn't tell us any details about his person, what he looks like, or what he acts like, or what he does. It's not mentioned here. He just says, I'm a person. But he also says other things. I'm inconceivable. I'm the maintainer of everything. I'm the controller of everything. I'm this, I'm that. And in the universal form, when Arjuna sees the universal form, he kind of gets that picture. You're amazing. You're huge, and you encompass everything, and everything is maintained by you. And you know past, present, and future. I can see it in just looking at you. I can see all the people in the future entering your mouth and being crushed by your teeth. Crushed in your jaws. I can see all this past, present, and future just looking at you. And you know what? It's really scary. I don't want to remember you like this all the time. I don't want to think of you like this all the time. This thought of you, this vision of you, although extremely powerful, is not very pleasant. It's scary. He was petrified when he saw that vision of Krishna. And ultimately he said, could you change it? Could you please go back to something that I could relate to a little bit better? And so Krishna went back to the form and finally to the Somya Vapu, which is the two-armed form, the most beautiful form. So here we're not getting the full picture, but there is a very full picture of Krishna as a person. Sweet, Madhuram, that Krishna has wonderful pastimes. And as we go further in our exploration of Krishna, we see him in the Bhagavatam, in the pages of the Bhagavatam. And we see him through the eyes of the great devotees who have loving relationships with him. And then we see a person. We really see a person. We get to meet this person, this sweet, loving, caring person who has wonderful, wonderful pastimes, who does amazing things, even when he's not trying to be amazing. With the beginning of the class, he said he's amazing when he wants to be. Even when he doesn't want to be, he's amazing. Right? He does amazing things. I was just on the Govardhan retreat, and the devotees, I was very fortunate to be there because everyone was talking this time about Leela. Everyone was explaining in great detail different Leelas of Krishna. We were talking about the Govardhan Leela, we were talking about the Damodar Leela, and we were talking about the Kaliya Leela. Those three Leelas in particular. So, we read those Leelas and we think we know them. Krishna danced on the head of Kaliya and so many. But the details of those Leelas, the activities that Krishna did, even the way he does things, the way he ties his belt, the way he adjusts his turban when he jumps on Kaliya's head, the way he looks at his devotees, he glances at them, speaks to them in ways that are known only to them, that they perceive by the way he looks at them out of the corner of his eye, or the way he gestures to them means something special to them. Once I went to Tirgadamba, and the Baba there, he was speaking to all the devotees, and he said that Krishna's flute is like he uses his flute like we use our cell phone. Right? He has everybody's number. All the cows, they each have their flute song. It's all in his flute. And he plays their particular notes, and the cows know, oh, Krishna is calling me. And they come running. So, and each cowherd boy, each gopi, they have their number. Krishna dials the number. And they hear, Krishna is calling me. And then they come. Krishna has a loving relationship with each and every living entity. And living entity is not limited to people. Living entity is even the flute, the bamboo flute. Everything in the spiritual world is animate, and everything in the spiritual world has a loving relationship with Krishna. We were hearing how the milk was thinking, wait a minute, Krishna is sucking on Mother Jasoda's breast, and he's not going to be hungry anymore. He's going to be fully satisfied. And if he's fully satisfied, then he won't want to drink me. So I got to do something about this. So he boiled over. So then Mother Jasoda was thinking, oh my goodness, this is special milk from special cows. And how can I let it get ruined on the stove? So she put Krishna down, and she went to take care of the milk. So then, you know the story that our Krishna became very angry and did all kinds of silly things. But while he did those silly things, those angry things, those naughty things, he also saved the twin Arjuna trees because of a loving relationship with his devotee. Because he had a loving relationship with Narada, and Narada had promised these two people, these two demigods, who were acting like complete morons. He said, I curse you to become trees, but you get the benediction that in 100 years, Krishna will save you. So then Krishna thought, I don't know these trees. I don't know anything about these two. I have no relationship with them, but I have a relationship with my devotee. And he gave his word, so I have to honor his word. And he knocked down the trees very easily. So this is the person, and so many wonderful, wonderful things that Krishna does, so that we can talk about him, so that we can remember him. Even this Mahabharata, where the Bhagavad-Gita is in the middle, so in the middle, we have this discussion, and I don't know how many of you have watched the Mahabharata movies, but I used to work in the Gurukula, and this is a popular pastime, watching these movies. And when you get to the movie about the Bhagavad-Gita, then everyone wants to fast forward it, because it's all philosophy. Who cares about philosophy? It's boring. Krishna and Arjuna, no one's shooting, no one's fighting, no one's doing anything. They're just talking to each other. Who needs it? So they fast forward it. But really, this Bhagavad-Gita trains us. It trains us. Here, Krishna is training Arjuna, even though Arjuna doesn't really need training. He has a loving relationship with Krishna already, but we need training. We need training to want to hear about Krishna, to want to absorb ourselves in Krishna, to do what's necessary to think about Krishna all the time, to perfect our lives so that we can be absorbed in Krishna 24/7. And there's a lot of other things that want us to be absorbed in them, right? The internet wants us to be absorbed in it, and the TV wants us to be absorbed in it, and the different Facebook and this book and that Twitter and this thing and that thing, they all want us to be absorbed in them. And other people want us to be absorbed in them. And politics wants us to be absorbed in that. And all the different stores, they want us to be absorbed in what they have to sell. Maya, in general, she wants us to be absorbed in the material energy. She wants us to be absorbed in making money. Now we're in India, there's money conscious, right? Everybody's like trying to figure out what to do about money. You hear it everywhere, money, 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 what to do about money, how to get money. And then, so we're being pulled. We're being pulled by the material energy. The material energy is not passive, she's active. Material energy is also Krishna's energy. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Right? The material energy is very powerful. And she has a job. And her job is to keep you in Maya. You absorbed in her. She also wants you to think of her. Krishna wants you to think of him. She wants you to think of her. She wants you to be absorbed in Maya. Because if you are, then you won't be allowed into the spiritual world. You won't be allowed, and that's her job. Her job is the security force. You can't get in unless you can ignore her, unless you're able to not be disturbed by her, not be disturbed at all by her. And that's not easy. It's not easy to do. Even in a few hours of the day, even in a few minutes of the day, it's very difficult for us not to be disturbed by the material energy. So the only way Krishna describes here is that to be undisturbed is to fix our mind on him, to pull our mind away from the material energy, we have to put it in a different direction. And so here he's talking about this yoga practice. The yoga practice is difficult. The yoga practice is difficult to artificially bring the mind under control, to pull it away from wherever it wanders, bring it back under the control of the self. Keep focusing it. Keep trying to draw your senses within and control them. It's very hard. But if we have something else to absorb our mind in, something that's particularly attractive, something that's particularly active, something that's all-encompassing, something that's always drawing our attention and giving us infinite pleasure, then it becomes easy for us to control the mind. And that's why this process of bhakti-yoga is so wonderful, because we can eat nice prasadam. But if it's Krishna and we're absorbed in Krishna while we're eating this prasadam, it's offered to Krishna. Krishna, you're so kind, you've given us this nice prasadam, spiritual food, to help us conquer over the tongue in this world, right? Because the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. It likes to talk a lot, and it's attracted to eating all kinds of junk. So if we can bring it back and control it by taking prasadam, the mind is always drawn to things that are no good for it. It's drawn to anger, it's drawn to lust, it's drawn to envy, it's drawn to greed. The mind and senses are pulled by the three gunas. How do we pull them away? We pull them away by absorbing them in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His wonderful pastimes. This is why Krishna appears in this world. And this is why Prabhupada was so eager to give us the pastimes of Krishna. That at the very beginning, even before he translated the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he gave us Krishna book. He gave us Krishna book. Because three reasons. One is because he didn't think he would be here. He was worried, even though we thought he would be here forever. Prabhupada knew better. And he thought, I may not stay long enough to translate the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then with that reasoning, he thought, but if they enter into the 10th canto without the Bhaktivedanta purports, that would be a very dangerous thing. That would be a very dangerous thing. They may take it as some mundane thing. They may not understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so he wanted to take us to that 10th canto and walk us through the Leelas of Krishna and give us the foundational knowledge so that we could build on that understanding and come to relish Krishna's pastimes, come to know Krishna as a person, come to love him through his Leelas. Prabhupada wanted us to do that. So he walked us into that thing. And Prabhupada didn't want to risk the fact that we would enter into that Leela without his guidance. And so the Krishna book is written in such a way that Prabhupada's purports are woven in. You can't take them out. It's not possible. You can't just read the verses. So we can read that book, and then we can go to the 10th canto and so many different Leelas of Krishna, and we can have the lens with which to see the purity and the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the beauty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because our Lord is a beautiful Lord, and he's a very kind Lord, and he's a very attractive Lord. He's not only the maintainer and the sustainer and understands Trikaligya, and he's not, eternal. Yes, he's all those things. But all those things are not the things that the Bhakta loves about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have to love Krishna. And so we have to do something, we have to do what we do for Krishna's pleasure. You see, by the end of Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, now I've told you everything, now do what you want. So Arjuna's conclusion is, I'll do what you say. Now I'll do whatever you want. So if Arjuna was told, don't fight, then he wouldn't have fought. But Krishna wanted him to fight, so he fought. He was no longer attached one way or the other to fighting. That wasn't the issue, fighting, not fighting. Now the issue had changed. The issue had become, how to serve you. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Whatever you say, karisye vachanam tava. Whatever you want, I'll do it. And this is how we have to come. If we want to attain the Supreme, that's what this chapter is about. If we want to attain the Supreme, then we need to do whatever Krishna wants. Fortunately for us, Krishna wants whatever Prabhupada wants. So, if we do what Prabhupada wants, then we're automatically pleasing Krishna, we're automatically doing... So many people say, well, Arjuna was on the chariot with Krishna, I'm not on the chariot with Krishna, how am I supposed to know? But it's not so difficult. I was speaking in Bhagavatam the other day, I gave a little principle, KISS, the KISS principle, keep it simple, sadhu. So keep it simple, sadhu, that, we worry about so many things, should I do this, and should I do that, and should I do this, and that. But really, it's very simple. We just have to chant Krishna's name and hear about him and chant our rounds and take Bhagavad Prasadam and then dance in front of the deities, and we get tired, then we sit down and eat Prasadam again, and then we discuss the philosophy as given in Prabhupada's books. We read, we discuss amongst devotees, machchata, majgata, pranam, katayantas, chamanyatya. So these are the things that we need to do. It's not complicated. These other things may be complicated, this job or this situation or this money or this, and those kind of ride above it. We have to ride above it. Because if we don't ride above it and fix our mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we will not attain the Supreme at the time of death. And actually, as we get older, all these things become smaller and smaller and smaller and mean less and less and less, because we see they're going to go away. You can't take anything with you. There's one little story that one man, he was stressing over the fact, because he was very wealthy, and he saw that his health was deteriorating, and what was he going to do with all his money, and he was so worried. So he went to some sadhu and he asked for advice. Please tell me what to do. I have so many things, so much money, I don't know what to do. And so the sadhu said, let me think about it. You come back in a day or two. So in a day or two he came back. He said, did you find out what I should do? He said, yes, I had a vision. I had a vision of you in the spiritual world, and you were with Krishna. You were asleep in a mosquito net. But the mosquito net had a hole in it, and all the mosquitoes were coming in and biting you, so you should take a needle with you when you go back to Goloka, because you'll have to sew that hole. He said, well, how am I supposed to take a needle with me? He said, I have no idea, but you're worried about taking all your things, and you can't even take one needle. So why worry about all these things if you can't even take one needle with you? So we worry about all these things, but we don't need these things. These things, you'll see, as you get older, they all become one needle, and you can't take it with you. And more, as you become aware of the temporality of the material energy, you see that all that matters is remembering Krishna. All that matters is thinking of Krishna, Hare Krishna. All that matters is coming closer to Krishna by chanting his holy name and associating with his devotees. Trying to fix our mind on him so that at the moment of leaving this material world, we will be already fixed in our next destination, which will be at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So I'll stop there. And if there's any questions, perhaps we can have some discussion. You have arguments? You just came in here 1 minute ago.
You were saying that Krishna told him, Arjuna, everything. And he told him to fight. So he was ready to whatever service he wanted to do it. But sometimes somebody said that Krishna told him, now I have told you everything, now you decide what you have to do.
He did.
So what is the correct? Whether Krishna gave him the decision or he just surrendered and he did service?
Krishna gave him the decision and he surrendered. Because surrender means I made the decision to do what you said. That's what surrender means. If I didn't make the decision, then there's no surrender. Right? So Krishna gave him the decision, and then Arjuna surrendered. He chose to surrender. This is what we all have to do. I was once teaching Bhakti Shastri, and I was in a classroom, and I asked everybody, has anybody been in this chanting Hare Krishna for more than 20 years? So there was one young man who couldn't have been more than 23, and he raised his hand. And I said, how you can be a devotee for 20 years? You're barely 20 years old. He said, well, I was born in the Krishna consciousness movement, so I had no choice. I had to be a devotee. I said, no, that's not true. You don't have to be anything. And just because you were born in the movement doesn't make you anything either. You know, you can come and go, you can dress in a dhoti and not have anything to do with Krishna whatsoever. So really, until you choose to surrender to Krishna, and by the way, that choice takes place every minute. It's not like you choose once and then it's done, finished, I surrender. I remember when I wrote to Prabhupada for my initiation, I wrote the shloka where Arjuna says, now I'm a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. And I didn't know what I was talking about because I wasn't a soul surrendered unto anything. I didn't know what surrender even meant. I had no idea. Surrender is a constant realization, it's a constant practice, and we have to constantly do it. And it's by that active surrender on our part that we actually come to know Krishna, that we please Krishna. Krishna is pleased by that endeavor to surrender. Even we don't succeed, just making the endeavor. Krishna sees us working towards surrender, and he becomes pleased that we're trying to surrender. Every minute we have to surrender. Is that okay?
Yes, and you said, God sisters, God brothers, we are all on the line, we are on the death side. But sometimes some devotees, they come out that we shouldn't listen to Mataris or we shouldn't hear from.
That's your choice.
Sometimes.
I agree, you shouldn't listen to me. I can't say the other Matajis, they may be brilliant devotees, but I don't. As far as I could see with Srila Prabhupada, he didn't consider that situation. He had people speak in front of huge groups of people, sing in front of huge group of people in both genders. And he, actually there's a very beautiful letter, you can look it up. I read it at the retreat. Satchidananda Swami asked me to read it. It's a letter that was written by Prabhupada in 1957. 1957. So 1957, or 56, sorry, 56 was before Srila Prabhupada even came to America. And 8 years before Prabhupada came to America. And Prabhupada says, he's writing to the President of India, and he writes in that letter, I have the formula whereby every man and woman in the world can go back to Godhead in this lifetime. So Srila Prabhupada was eager to take every man and woman back to Godhead in this lifetime. We have to willingly go. He gives us the process, he gives us the instruction, he gives us the how-to, but we have to do it. We have to surrender. And all of us have different situations in which we have to surrender. Someone has a very intelligent body, someone has a body that's not so smart, someone has a female body, someone has a male body, someone's tall, someone's short, someone's fat, someone's strong, someone's weak, someone's whatever. There's so many options, right? And whatever body you find yourself in, with whatever faculties you have, someone's blind, someone's deaf, someone can't move, someone has so many different challenges. As we get closer to death, it's very likely that we'll experience those challenges, right? Maybe some of the faculties we have will go away. We'll find out what it's like to be deaf, what it's like to be blind, what it's like to not be able to walk, what it's like to not be able to think clearly. And it becomes a level playing field. It's described in the Battle of Kurukshetra that when they went in the end and everyone was dead and the the remaining people in the Kauravas and the remaining people of the Pandavas were trying to burn their relatives, the bodies of their dead relatives. They didn't matter anymore who was a Kaurava, who was a Pandava. Didn't make any difference anymore. So ultimately in the spiritual realm, we're all female, every one of us. And that's the perfection of human life. So we're all servants of Krishna, and Krishna sees us that way, and we have to come to that position of surrender. That's the bottom line. At the moment of death, it won't matter what gender we had when we were in the material body.
Mother,
Huh?
this chapter is for preparation of death.
Excuse me?
This chapter
Huh.
deals with how you should prepare for the death.
Yes, how to prepare for death.
In the slok number 5, he has distinctly told, at the end you have to remember me.
Huh?
Then you will pass the examination.
Huh?
In the slok number 14, it deals with us. It tells you should remember Nityasa. Nityasa means daily.
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 Nitya.
Nitya, eternally. Always.
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 Anyway.
Always anyway, yes.
How best we can implement this slok number 9, which you are teaching today.
How best?
We can implement in our daily life to remember the point of 7 remembrance.
Well, these 7 remembrances are not all. This is just a small part, these 7 remembrances. But you can remember these 7 and an infinite number more by just doing what Prabhupada asked you to do. You rise early in the morning, you chant japa, you read Srila Prabhupada's books, you go before Radhe Shyam, Krishna Balaram, Gaurnitai, and you pray. And then if you feel extremely inspired that you are so fortunate, then you go out and give that fortune to others. And then you get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when you have the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada, then everything becomes perfect. And even a blind man can see, even a lame man can climb mountains, and even a fool who's in a female body can say something that makes sense.
You are not serious about implementing these 7 points.
No, I'm not serious about them. I think I'm very serious about them, but they're not all. It's just like Krishna, Arjuna says, tell me how you pervade tell me of your opulences. So Krishna gives a list, and then he says, but what's the use of this? I have so many opulences, I have unlimited things, I'm giving you just a drop because you're asking me the question I'm trying to answer, but it's not possible for me to tell you everything. So this verse, he gives you 8 things, but they're not details, they're general categories. How does Krishna maintain? How is Krishna a person? How is Krishna aware of past, present, and future? How is Krishna wonderful? How is Krishna powerful? These things we understand more and more by studying Krishna's activities, by learning about Krishna's devotees and seeing how Krishna reciprocates with his devotees. When Krishna reciprocates with Prahlad, we learn so much. We learn so much about how he takes care of his devotee. Even in a very difficult situation, how Krishna reciprocates with so many wonderful devotees throughout the pages of the Bhagavatam. We understand Krishna as a person, and as we understand Krishna as a person, we learn to love him. There used to be a song when I was a kid, to know him is to love him. So you can know him by chanting his name, you can know him by reading about him and understanding who he is and what he does and what his wonderful relationships are with the devotees. And in that way, we can do all these 9 things and another 900 things besides that. We can understand Krishna. And we should stop. Yeah, go ahead.
You told that from Bhagavad-Gita 3, everybody get more details about the stories. Where they take this?
A lot of them come from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, but they're woven into Prabhupada's Siddhanta. Prabhupada is the big picture, and then there's some little details here and there on the painting that make it a little bit more attractive, a little flower here, a little something. But Prabhupada, they read from the Bhagavatam, so Bhagavatam was there. Very nice. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Om.